Hello there. So I'm going to go over graphing functions, and so by the end of this video you should be able to look at a graph of a function on a piece of graph paper and tell me what that formula is. Or you should also be able to look at a formula and tell me what that graph is going to look like by the end of this video. So first, we need to start off with the mother of all functions, the mother of all graphs, and that's this one right here, y equals x squared. And some of this stuff is you just have to memorize it, but it proves useful later on. If you have this stuff memorized, it's like learning the hotkeys on your computer. It makes your world go faster and easier later on. And this is going to come up again and again while you're in the math class this semester. So it's a good idea to learn this anyway, or at least get the gist of it. So y equals x squared that's like your baseline. That's your basic parabola graph. And it looks something like this. And it looks something like this. See, it goes down, it makes a U right at that 0 point, and it comes back up. So it pretty much makes a smiley face, and the center of it, where it folds over, is right there in the middle point at the 0 in the middle of your graph paper. So smiley face, that's x squared. Y equals x squared. Now let's go into why that is for a minute so you can understand this. If you make a little chart, here's x and here's y, and we just plug in some values for x. So let's say we're going to plug in 4 values, and 0 is going to be the middle one. And we're going to plug in 5 values, and 0 is going to be the middle one. So this is going to be -1, -2, and this will be 1, 2. So if we're just picking these randomly, these values for x. So let's do the first one. If x equals -2, what does that make y? So we got down here, y equals x squared. So y would equal -2 squared. So what is -2 squared? -2 squared is 4. So y would equal 4. So we're going to write that up here in the chart. So when x is -2, y is +4. Now let's try another one. If x is -1, then what is y? Well, you got y equals -1 squared. So what's -1 squared? -1 squared is 1. So let's write 1 up here under the y's. So when x is -1, y is 1. Now when x is 0, that cancels out this entire x squared right here. So that would mean y is also equal to 0. When x is equal to 1, we'll have y equals 1 squared, and 1 squared is still just 1, right? So y would be 1 when x is 1. And then the final one, when x is 2, y equals 2 squared. So 2 squared is 4. So now we have our chart. And we can plot these lines. I'm going to erase this purple graph that I made just so we can start over and plot some new lines perfectly using these values here. And you're not going to have to actually do this chart every single time, but if you get lost or you forget what you're doing, you can always go back and do a chart like that and then plot the points. And again, these values for x, this -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, I just use those because they're the smallest numbers. I just pick those randomly. You can actually pick any numbers you want and plug them into there. So let's graph this mug. So when x is -2, then y is 4. So with x, we always start in the center and we go -2. So here's 1, here's 2, and then y is 4. So that's +4. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's your -2 and 4 dot. I'm going to make that red. Now let's do the next set right here. -1, x is -1 and y is +1. So x, you start at the middle circle, is -1, so we just move 1 back. And then y is +1, so you just move that up 1. And there's your dot. And I'm going to make that a red dot just so we remember that the red dots are what we actually put on the graph when we graph it. Now 0, when x is 0 down here, y is 0. So if x is 0 and y is 0, that's just the middle 0. So we're going to put a big old fat dot there in the middle 0. Now let's go into the positive numbers. X is +1, x is +1. So we're just going to start in the middle 0 and we're going to move up 1 block. So x is 1 right here, so I'm going to circle that point just so we can keep that in the back of our mind. Here's x, +1, and then y is going to be also a +1. So from where you left off at that x, that +1x, we just move up 1 point, and that's x1, y1. So let me get my red out, and I'll turn that into a red dot, because that's what you put on the fraction. And now let's do the very last set of ordered pairs. We'll do this 2 and 4. So if x is 2, we're going to start in the middle circle, the middle 0 there, and we're going to count over 2 blocks. 1, 2. And so I'm going to draw a little circle there just so we remember that that's where x is. And then y is 4, and that's +4, so it's going to go up. So you just, from where that x circle is that I just made, that purple circle, we're just going to count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me get out my red, and I'm going to make a red dot there, and that's where x is 2 and y is 4. Now if you notice, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red dots on here. You don't pay any attention to all the rest of the markings that I made. I just did that just to clarify things. So let's erase all of that so you know that that doesn't actually belong on there. Okay, so now I got all of the extra notes that I was writing all over the graph paper. I got rid of all of that. So this is the only thing that you should see on your graph paper are these red dots. And then let's take a different color. Let's take an orange color. And all you do is you connect the dots. But you see how these dots, they don't make a straight line. What happens is they make a V. See, they make a V like that. And when it goes down and then it turns around and makes some kind of a V like that, that is called a parabola. So, and this parabola, this is the most basic, this is your basic parabola that you want to learn. Just this basic parabola right here is y equals x squared. So this graph right here is always y equals x squared. That's just what it looks like. So if you ever see a y equals x squared, you're going to go for the v whose bottom point of the v is in that 0 in the center of the graph. That's its middle boundary, or its middle anchor. And then it goes up in a V both ways. So here we have the cleaned up version of y equals x squared, and this is your home base. This is your basic parabola graph, y equals x squared, and it looks like this. It's a happy face, and the bottom of the happy face hits that 0 in the center of the graph. What if you were to have the same thing, y equals x squared, but the x squared is negative? How do you think that would change this graph over here, this happy face with the orange? Well, putting a negative sign in front of that x squared, that's going to turn it into a frowny face going the other way. So you're going to have a point here, a point here, a point here. So you're going to have a frowny face, a mirror image of y equals x squared. So this is y equals negative x squared, this frowny face, this mirror image down, and you notice this is down below the line here. This is in negative range for y. So the orange is y equals x squared. That's your basic general parabola. And the parabola is just that shape of that smiley face like that. And then y equals negative x squared. All you have to do is put a negative onto that x squared, and you have a mirror image of it reflected, still tied to that 0 in the center of the graph, but they all point down. The arrows point down. Okay, so we're back to ground zero. We're back to y equals x squared, which is your basic parabola. This orange smiley face with the orange, with the axis point of the orange smiley face down at the middle 0 in the graph. Now, what if you want to add to that x squared? So let's say x squared plus 2. What if you have a plus 2 there? Well, it's actually really easy. You don't have to go through and make a chart and find all the dots or anything. You just take this x squared that you already know what the x squared looks like. That's this. That's the parabola, the smiley face in the middle, in the center of the graph. And the plus 2 means you raise it up 2 points on the y. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take the bottom of the smiley face, and the bottom of the smiley face is in this middle circle right here. So you just go up 1 point, or 1 block, 2 blocks, and there's your new basis for the smiley face. So you just have to move everything up. So now this goes here, this goes here, and you make a new smiley face, the exact same shape as the old one. It's just that it has been moved up. It has been moved up 2 points or 2 boxes. And why was it moved up 2 boxes? Because we added this +2 at the end of the x squared. So y equals x squared plus 2 is the same thing as y equals x squared, except it's raised up 2 boxes. Now, what if instead of y equals x squared plus 2, we had y equals x squared minus 2? What would you think would happen? We would go back to that center 0 where we all started from, the origin point, and we would just take the whole smiley face, the orange smiley face, your original x squared smiley face, and we would just move it down 2 squares down here. So then this would be moved down here, and these points would be moved down here. So you would make this smiley face if you took it x squared minus 2. See, up here was plus 2, so that's why we raised it to 2 squares. And then here is minus 2, and that's why we lowered it 2 squares. But it's still a parabola, it's still the same V shape. It's just up or down on the graph paper. Okay, so let's go back and review just real quick. So we have this equation y equals x squared, and what is that going to look like on the graph paper without having to do any math? Without making a little XY chart. You know how we were making those XY charts? You don't have to do any of that. Just by memorization, what is y equals x squared look like on the graph? It looks like a smiley face, right? So, and that's not all that great of a drawing of me. I went off the lines and everything, but you get the idea. Pretty much this little smiley face whose middle is in the middle circle in the graph, that smiley face, that is y equals x squared. So what about y equals x squared plus 4? Well, we're going to do y x squared plus 4. So first, you still start off with y equals x squared. So you start off with that parabola. But then you have a 4 added to it at the end. So we're going to move that entire parabola up 4 squares. We're going to shift the whole thing up 4 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where your new 0 point is. And you make your happy face up here. So see, the only thing I did differently was shift the entire thing up 4 squares, because it has this plus 4 at the end after the x squared. So what if I have y equals x squared minus 4? Well, so y equals x squared minus 4. X squared is still the same old, same old. X squared is still that original smiley face right in the middle of the graph paper that we drew in red. That's x squared. But then you go and put a minus 4 on it, So a -4 just means we're going to shift this entire smiley face down 4 boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's where I'm going to plot the point for the 0, and we're just going to draw the smiley face down this way. So see, we just moved the entire parabola down 4 boxes. We didn't change anything. We didn't change the happy face or the smiley face. We didn't make it do different shapes or move out or get fatter or skinnier or anything. We just moved the whole thing, shifted the whole thing down 4 boxes. And that is y equals x squared minus 4. So now what are we going to get when we have y equals negative x squared? Well, this negative sign just means it's the exact same thing as x squared, except it's upside down. You turn the smiley face into a frowny face, and you still start at that 0 point. Every time you do this, you got to start at that middle 0 point. So we're just going to make a frowny face here. So that would be y equals negative x squared. So what if we had, let's get a different color. What if we had y equals negative x squared, just like we did, just right there, plus 2. Well, remember, anytime we have this plus a number at the end after the x squared, that just means you're going to shift it up or down. And since it's a plus, it's a positive, you're going to shift it up. You're going to shift the whole thing up. But since we also have a negative, it's going to be a frowny face, not a smiley face. So we're going to take this negative x squared frowny face that we made in the last one, and we're going to shift the whole thing up 2 points or 2 blocks. So 1, 2. So here we go. So this would be negative x, because it's a frowny face, plus 2, because it's 2 higher than the middle 0 on the graph paper. Now, so we've gone over how to make a smiley face, and that's just the plain old basic x or y equals x squared. That's your basic. We've gone over how to turn that smile upside down into a frown, and that's just turning it into y equals negative x squared. The negative is what turns it upside down into a frown. Then we've learned how to move the parabola up by adding something to the end of the x squared plus something. And we've learned how to make the parabola go down on the graph paper by subtracting a number from the x squared. But we haven't gone through yet how to make it go shift over to the left or to the right. So let's do that now. As you can see, I have the basic parabola y equals x squared already drawn on the graph, so we can just use that as a point of reference to remember where our home base is. And what I want to do is I want to shift this parabola over 1. So I can't go y equals x2 plus 1, because when you have the plus 1 at the end, that makes it go up or down, remember? So I'm going to erase that. But I do want it to move over 1. I just want it to move over 1 to the side, to the left or the right, not up or down. So what we do for this is that you change this into x, and then if I want to go to the right, it seems counterintuitive, but if I want to go to the right, you would think it would be a plus 1, but it's actually not. It's a negative 1. And then you put that in parentheses, and then you put your 2, you carry that 2 down. So you turn this x into an x minus 1 squared instead of just x squared. So what does that do? That makes the whole parabola shift this way 1 box. Why 1 box? Because we just chose the number 1 for this right here. So shift to the right 1 box. So I'm going to move this 0 point over here, and we're going to do one of these numbers, and we're going to do one of these numbers, and there you go. That is y equals parentheses x minus 1 to the second power. Now what happens if you want to shift it backwards? You would think, I know that, understand that you would think that this negative 1 would make it shift backwards, but it really doesn't. And that's all you have to do is just remember that. It's just because that's the way math works out, because they're in parentheses and all that. So if you want to shift it backwards to, this is not backwards, so I'll scratch it out. If you do want to move that parabola backwards to the left, then you're going to want to put a positive number there next to the x and then square it. So y equals x plus 1 squared, or the quantity of x plus 1 squared, means you're going to take this 1 and you're going to move your 0, your original 0, back 1. And here you go. And then we're just going to draw the rest of the parabola in. So that's going to be y equals x plus 1 squared. So one more time, your basic parabola is that just this formula is y equals x squared. And that means the bottom peak of it, the bottom point of it, is at the middle center 0, and it goes up on one side and it goes up on the other side until you have a little smiley face. If you want a frowny face, then you need to make the x squared a negative x squared. So it'll still start in the middle 0, but instead of going up on either direction, it's going to go down in either direction, and it'll make a frowny face. So that's negative x squared. Y equals negative x squared. Now if you want to shift things up, you'd go y equals x squared plus however many boxes you want to shift up, let's say 5. So you start from that original 0 in the middle and you count up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's your new axis point for it, and you just make a smiley face from there, And when you draw this, they don't really look like V's. They look more like U's. I'm not really doing it justice. When you print them out professionally, it looks more like a U, like a curved, like that instead of that. We don't want a V, we want a U when you draw these out. So what's the formula if you want, instead of this parabola getting moved up here, what if you wanted the parabola to get moved down here somewhere? Well, so that would be, you always start with y equals x squared, and then you do something to it to make it move. So if you want to move it down, you go minus, and then we'll do 7 squares. So we'll start at the original 0 in the center, and we'll go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, right on there. And since this is a positive x squared, that's going to be a smiley face. So that would be y equals x squared minus 7 all the way down there. Now, what if you put the extra number, the add or subtract extra number, inside the x before you square it? So you go x minus 4 squared. Well, you go back to the beginning, the original 0 in the middle of the graph paper, and since this is a -4, you're going to want to move it to the right. I know it seems like you should be moving it to the left because it's a negative number, but just for these transformations that we're doing, just remember that it's the opposite of what it seems like. This is -4, so it's going to go to the right into the positive space. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the point, and the x is positive, so we're just going to draw our happy face. Now, if you wanted to move that parabola to the left, you would say x plus 4 in parentheses and then squared. And so you would go back and start in the middle circle again, in the middle of the graph paper, and plus 4 means you would go back 4 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to be your starting point. And since the x is positive, you're going to make a smiley face, not a frowny face. And that's it. There's more difficult practice problems you can get into, but start with this for now, and I'll try to find you some practice problems and get them posted up along with this video.